Here's Brody Brazil.
Not gonna lie, never thought I'd be making a lawsuits video here on a sports YouTube channel, but it's important and it's a bit interesting, and quite honestly, things are actually going positive in this regard for Howard Terminal and potentially getting past the 4 lawsuits that face the project. 3 are aimed at the EIR certification by the city of Oakland. There's another lawsuit out there that goes up against the BCDC. They recently removed port priority use from the Howard Terminal site, essentially rezoning it so that a ballpark could eventually be built there. Let me just try and summarize the bigger picture here. There were these 3 CEQA lawsuits filed against Oakland's EIR approval for the project. So 3 different entities, they're called petitioners. They are picking holes, trying to poke holes in the EIR certification that would stall this project, that would delay the project, that would necessitate recirculating an EIR. You understand how that could greatly turn the tables, turn things around in an instant. So these lawsuits obviously need to go well for the project. Now, there were tentative rulings just about a week ago, August 29th, by Alameda County Superior Court Judge Brad Seligman. All of these initial rulings were favorable to the project. I mean, like literally every last one of them. There was about 70 to 90 pages total between these 3 different cases. A lot of different details and aspects covered. But there was one thing that the judge, I don't want to say sided against the EIR, but seemed like he needed a little bit more information on, and that was the potential wind impact of the project. No, not necessarily that the project would create wind, but how would it deal with wind? How would it mitigate wind as these structures are built just north of Jack London Square? We'll get into that in just a second, I promise. The judge says that a potential outcome and his decision on all of this, it's possible by next week. A couple days ago, he heard from both sides after his initial rulings. But I should also be fair and let you know, no matter what his rulings ultimately are, there will likely be appeals on this. So it's not going to be said and done and totally complete, but that's how the process goes. There's also that other lawsuit filed by the East Oakland Stadium Alliance against the BCDC, again, going back to their June 30th decision to remove port priority use from the land. The lawsuit questioning whether the BCDC should have looked more into the project itself, but it was very clear. They said they were only looking at the idea of the land and what it could be used for, and eventually they will have to take a look at the Howard Terminal project and plans because the BCDC will eventually need to approve a land permit for this project. I digress. Let's go back to the whole wind issue, right? So here's what the judge said in that initial ruling. The EIR engaged a detailed preliminary report using a scale model of the proposed project, disclosed the significant and unavoidable impacts as well as the unknown conditions, and committed to mitigating impacts through a future study. While petitioners do not dispute that the true magnitude of future wind impacts cannot be determined until there are specific building plans, they argued that the proposed mitigation is impermissibly vague and open-ended and lacks any performance standard. It requires a wind expert to demonstrate to the, quote, satisfaction of the city that there is no impact, or if so, to demonstrate feasible mitigation strategies, including a laundry list of potential modifications. What the mitigation measure lacks, however, is any performance standard. And then here's the conclusion of it. Thus, the EIR improperly defers mitigation measures for wind impacts. But, yeah, the detailed language is vague, but it has to be there. Maybe coming up with a performance standard. Maybe what we're looking for here is a baseline. Like if you build the buildings this way and they're this height and they're at this angle, what is too much wind for the neighborhood, for the neighbors around it? I get it. This is just something where what came first, the chicken or the egg? It doesn't matter because we're not there yet. We don't have an actual ballpark plan finalized. So I get it. And look, if this is the only thing out of all the other items to be discussed, like where can trucks be parked? that were previously stored at Howard Terminal? How much recreational boating traffic will there be? Emissions, railroad and pedestrian issues. There were a lot of different things that the petitioners tried to poke at. This is the only one that was a bit questionable. And I think my point is here, if this is questionable, this will easily get resolved in real life. Going back to the actual EIR, I pulled this bit from it. Here's what it said about wind impacts. The wind analysis shall be conducted by a qualified wind consultant. I didn't know that was a thing. The consultant shall conduct an analysis of the proposed building using a model that represents the proposed building in the context of then existing conditions, as well as in the context of proposed project as a whole. And then it kind of says, well, the project may change from time to time. The testing shall include test points deemed appropriate by the consultant and agreed upon by the Oakland Bureau of Planning to determine the wind performance of the building, such as building entrances and sidewalks, and the consultant's report shall be submitted to the Oakland Bureau of Planning. If the wind consultant demonstrates the satisfaction of the Oakland Bureau of Planning that the modified design would not create a net increase in hazardous wind hours or locations under partial build-out or build-out conditions compared to then existing conditions, no further review would be required. Okay. It seems like all we really need to do here is put like a wind velocity and a duration. And so long as this project does not create that or influence that or impact that or make it worse, then we'll be fine. So again, just goes to show you this is what the judge initially saw. You previously saw the way that he ruled on it, and I don't think this is going to be a big deal. But getting past these lawsuits, and let's be very clear, 3 of them are being addressed right now. They've had initial rulings that are quite favorable. There's only the one outstanding thing I just shared about wind that seems pretty able to be resolved, right? There is the other lawsuit about the BCDC, but even that, I mean, it was quite clear what they were analyzing, and it's quite clear that at some point they will tackle the project as a whole. They've said that, but their June 30th ruling had nothing to do with that. Anyway, that's a quick update on the wind issue or not at Howard Terminal, and hopefully sooner than later, the conclusion of these lawsuits. To be quite frank with you, they had to be done basically by the end of the year or early 2023. Here we are in September of 22, and it does seem like in these initial rulings, they're going to work out for the ballpark.